All right, so finally we meet.
Finally, we meet like face
Yeah,
to face instead
I
of just
know.
voice to voice and text to text.
I know. Good to see you again. I think we met last year summer, right?
I guess it was whenever Clubhouse started and everybody was like really into Clubhouse. And
That's right.
so
That's
we had
right.
our voices live.
Okay, Mark, please introduce yourself.
Mhm.
Where you are, what you do.
So I'm in Vancouver now. I'm originally from Montreal. And so I've been a Feng Shui consultant now for 20 years, I think 21 years. A lot of my work is in Japan. In
That's
your
very interesting connection.
Well, this is it, and this is why I'm really excited to talk with you
Mhm.
about your amazing book and about feng shui and kind of the cultural, I think the cultural connectivity of feng shui and the
Mhm.
cross-cultural connectivity. Because you and I both, you come from a Japanese culture and moved to the West. I was in the West and I moved to Japan and lived there for 5 years.
Yeah, that's
Also, and
very.
so I think we have a lot of, we can really look at, I think it's so interesting to talk about how each culture has certain elements of feng shui right,
Mm.
and then how they also have it wrong.
My very first book, a little bit of feng shui. So I published this book on February 1st, and then you are the one that I asked you to read and give me review, and then you're gonna share your thoughts. And I discussed so many things. I mean, I try to make it very simple and then basic and then
Mhm.
easy to understand, but also I covered very important thing, I think, in this book.
Definitely did. And I
Yeah.
know it's really hard for me. Like I just before, a couple of hours ago, I was giving a seminar online for some designers.
Mhm.
And my big challenge is also like, what do you leave out when there's so much, right? And so for me, the time limit, and when I'm writing, the page limit, or on Instagram, the character limit, it's like always, the big stress, because I think there's a point that you address in here that I think is super important. And I'm so happy you mentioned it,
Mm.
is that you can't put everything in any book. You can't put everything in any single book. It's never going to have everything,
Mhm.
and there's always more. And even though feng shui can bring us some fast results, and it has the reputation because people are amazed, like I just did this and then quickly something happened,
Mhm.
it's not always like that.
Right.
And I think this is the important thing. And so that's the challenge, especially I think when you're writing, it's like it's a small book, but
It's
you
really
covered, I'm amazed that you were able
challenging.
to cover like the really key details,
Mhm.
and in enough detail that people can start. And I think like you also made the really great point in there, not going too fast.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think that's the benefit of starting with something like this, and even the title, right? A little bit.
Yeah,
Let's just
yes,
let's
exactly.
just
I was
start a little bit and not like I need to do everything all at once.
exactly. So I try to make it very simple chapter. It's only 10 chapters, and then
Mhm.
each chapter is very short. But I started with what is feng shui is, and then what energy is, and then history of feng shui and the
Mhm.
style of feng shui, which we're gonna discuss.
Yeah,
Like contemporary feng shui and classic feng shui, compass and the BTB
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, and then the practical thing I shared. So yeah, let's talk about uh, how you got into feng shui business first, and then
Mhm.
ended up to practice in Japan, help Japanese
I
people.
know. No, it's kind of an interesting. You and I have this really sort of
Yeah,
crossover
yeah.
connection, right? Um, I mean, I was living in between London and Tokyo in most of the 90s. And it
Mhm.
was when I was in London that I came across feng shui, but it was because I was introduced to sort of more Asian style thinking, living in Japan, of course, and learning the language and being in a culture where all of a sudden I'm not the visible majority, like
Mm,
I'm the minority.
yeah.
And my way of doing everything for like 22 years until I went there, even though I went to lots of different countries, in Europe and so on, it's
Mm,
still like kind of the same thing.
mhm,
And then I'm learning the language, and it was my fourth language. And
mm,
it was harder than if it was my second,
mm.
because everything's backwards.
Exactly.
from our perspective, but from, Japanese perspective, everything English is backwards,
Yes.
right? So, I started to really get the relativity of what we've learned is only learned
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily true. It's just like what's familiar and what are we used to. And I was always really impressed that, in Japan, there's so many rituals that like everybody in Japan does. Like before eating, everybody in the whole country will say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
When they come home or when they go out, they all have like, there's this unification, which I just loved. And I also really appreciated like just the sense of style. Like even in a small space, they'll make something beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just by the entrance, there'll be one plant and it's angled just right. And it just looks, like looks great. So I moved to London and I was talking about my experiences with a roommate. I just moved in with a friend of a friend. And I was talking about, philosophy, and I got interested in Taoism.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Oh, have you heard of Feng Shui?" I was like, "What's that?" And he went upstairs to his room and brought down a book.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately I was hooked. And so I took some seminars with a famous author when I was in London. And then I just self-taught. And I was practicing when I lived back in Japan in 98, 99, just for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and helped some people. And then I came to Canada in 99, and I studied here in 2001.
So originally you were from Canada and I went to London and then Tokyo and then
With another Tokyo in between. It was Canada, then Tokyo, then London, then Tokyo again.
wow,
And then back to Canada.
forth.
Yeah. I know, lots of back and forth.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
Wow.
So because once I did my training, I never thought I was going to do this for a living. It was just really for my interest and my own growth. But people were getting results even when I was doing my training, and I had to give some free consultations. It's like one of them is still married to the guy who she met it's like 20 years ago, and she hadn't had a date in 2 years, and then within 1 month met the guy she's still married to. Wow. So I was like, okay, this really helps people. So I went back to Japan to visit for the first time after leaving in 2003. And a friend of mine there worked at the Tokyo, she was a member at Tokyo American Club, kind of like really fancy place for mostly foreigners. And she's like, "Oh, everybody's talking about Feng Shui, you should teach here." And I met the people there, and immediately they hired me to teach. But I was teaching for international people.
Okay.
And that's when I started to use the expression contemporary Feng Shui, because I was using the expression Western Feng Shui, which is what everybody kind of says. But I was like, I can't be a Western person going to the East to teach Western people how to do Western, like it just felt wrong.
It doesn't make sense.
It's just wrong to say that, a Western person knows how to do this. This has nothing to do with East and West. This is about 21st century.
Yeah.
So I brainstormed and I came up with nobody was using contemporary Feng Shui that I know of at the time. So I was happy to see you use the term, and that like more people are using this phrase now. Because I think we have to stop the East-West. Like you and I have, like we both have the Eastern and Western perspectives unified. And that's what's important. So then in 2005, I consulted for a lady there who then in 2008 said, "Oh, next time you come to Japan, I can arrange a workshop." And since then, since 2008, I've been going to Japan 1, 2, 3 times a year.
Wow. So you still visit Japan?
Pre-COVID, but yeah. But
wow, that's great.
I've been doing Zoom.
Yeah, because of COVID, now you can do a Zoom lecture. So
yeah, which I did. I've done a few times, which is great. But I still miss in person, and I still miss going to Japan. I've got my Japanese stuff with me here. I've sort of got myself some Japanese.
Yeah, you showed me yesterday.
I decided to take advantage of the opportunity.
I love it.
And myself some Japanese treats for our talk, or a little tea time. So for us, it's opposite, because I trained here and taught a lot there. You trained in Japan,
and then I came here.
And you came to the West.
It's totally like opposite. Like what we are doing is almost the same. Like but then the direction is just opposite.
Right. So I'm curious about your training in Japan.
Well, that was I mean, I talk about the episode here in the introduction, as you know. I don't tell the exact name, but there's a very, very famous Japanese Feng Shui master back then. I mean, still he's alive, and
still famous.
Yeah, very
I
famous.
know.
And yeah, in 80s and 90s, he made a really, feng shui really popular in Japan. And I was teenager, and I was really fascinated. I was a big fan of him. I bought a lot of books about feng shui written by him, and I followed his instruction, and I did everything as I was told by the book. But then, you know, at some, I don't know what
Or
the
the
trigger. What was
yeah.
the trigger that made me feel like, wait a minute, but
I had the same with the famous author who I studied with in London, where I was like,
oh yeah.
I don't think she really understands everything she's teaching.
Mm. Yeah,
And
so interesting. But I think that I was maybe still teenager, or maybe early 20s. I started doubting, well, if everybody, if everybody on earth do the same thing
mhm,
as he told us, for example, in that book, I mean, put the yellow thing in the west
mhm,
direction of your house, then you will get prosperity or something like that. And I started asking myself, what if everybody do this thing? And then, everybody get the same result. It doesn't make sense,
true.
because everybody's different, everybody's house is different, something
Everybody's
like that.
everybody's personality, their life path, their life story, their history, everything is
Exactly.
like so different. Totally.
Yeah, yeah.
I've recently been calling it like feng shui metabolism. Just like,
That's funny.
somebody can eat chocolate or French fries, they have like no problem. Other people eat it and immediately like get a pimple or get fat or something like
Right,
that. It's just,
right.
and same thing with feng shui. Somebody just does one thing and it's very quickly there's a
Yeah,
result. Other
yeah.
people have to work more, and it's not
Exactly.
the same. It's
Mm-hmm,
not
mm-hmm.
one size fits all.
Definitely. But in Japan, he become very big, and then the goods he made was sold very well,
I
the
know the
yellow.
yellow wallets.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Everybody still talks about it and would ask me every seminar, every time. Like I go 3 times a year, and every seminar
Yeah.
people ask, but what about the yellow wallet?
Yeah,
You
that's,
mean the
I think.
yellow wallets that he was selling that
Yeah.
one year when yellow was the color, but it's not that color anymore?
Yeah, so that was the trigger for me.
Yeah.
I just no, this is not supposed to be real feng shui. I mean, I shouldn't say, um, who knows who's gonna watch this, but anyway, so that's the moment when I decided, okay, I need to learn by someone. So I found my teacher, and back then I was learning. I think that was eight mansion, and like a Mingwa eight mansion style.
So
So
it's very
complex,
traditional and pretty
traditional
complex,
one.
and it has astrological
Exactly.
components, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's all I knew back then. I mean, until I came here, which is in
Uh,
2008. I
okay.
didn't know any BTB or contemporary.
And let's
Um,
just define the term, because BTB, to be honest, like that's pretty recent that I've heard that terminology. So I actually never even heard that until the last few years. So when I
oh,
was,
really?
yeah, no, even when I was doing my training in 2001, nobody said BTB.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was just Western feng shui
A
or
Western feng
modern feng
shui,
shui, and
right?
black hat sect
Yeah,
was
black hat
also,
sect. Yes,
yeah.
yes. I didn't know until I started. I mean, like I, I started teaching BTB. I mean, like I knew the style that I learned in Japan, but the reason why I had to learn BTB is just that I got hired by online school that provides a feng shui design course, and I got hired as a teacher because I know the design, I know the feng shui. But then I checked their curriculum, and then I said, "What BTB?" I never heard BTB. And then I realized that, oh, this is the Western style, which I never knew when I
Mm,
was in Japan. So I learned, and that's how. So I think it was 2000 when 2000 probably 18 or something like that.
okay,
Pretty recent,
makes
actually.
sense. So you have a long history of doing the more traditional, like
Yeah.
compass-based. I originally started with compass also.
Uh-huh.
So from 96, I was mostly using a compass personally. And
Mm-mm.
then it was when I met my teacher in 2000. She came for a consultation. She explained for me why she thought we shouldn't. and it really sort of, I just had to switch very
Mhm.
quickly. So
Ah, I see, I see. But do you, yeah, I discussed that in this book too. Like, some classical feng shui experts kind of look down on BTB
oh
or
yeah,
Western
for sure.
style. Yeah,
Yeah.
they say, oh, that's not feng shui.
Hmm.
But other like opposite like BTB style said,
Hmm.
well, compass style is blah 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 because it's old, it doesn't apply for
Yeah,
the modern life. And I understand that both points and
me
their
too.
pros and cons, pros and cons. So
100%.
I personally use both based on the my client's personality,
Yeah,
my client's needs,
yeah,
and I make a judgment. Sometimes I just only stick to compass or only stick to BTB, but um, but I try not to combine too much because
yeah. It gets
it's
confusing.
going to be confusing. But if I decided to use BTB for this client, then I'll use supplemental, knowledge so as a supplement.
Absolutely, I do the same. I
You just,
still have a few things in mind from how the bag was applied
yeah.
in the classical.
Uh-huh.
Like there's a couple of things with the elements that's different in the modern approach, but I still refer to that.
Hmm.
I still refer to health in the family area instead of in the center. I use the center still differently
Hmm.
than
Hmm.
the BTV, but generally, I don't do compass for a number of reasons. And, and I know it works. I mean, there's no question all of this stuff can work if you have sense with how you apply it. And this is the
Right,
challenge.
right.
For me, it's like really, I know a couple of people who do compass stuff and they do it really well because it's updated and it's not just, and this is the challenge, is how do you update the application while staying true to the principle and
Mhm.
true to the heart of it instead of true to the application? Because of course we're living with internet and Wi-Fi and
Right,
indoor plumbing and all these things that didn't exist 3,000 years ago. That all changes.
right,
That all
exactly.
changes everything.
Uh-huh.
So we
Uh-huh.
have to do something different,
Right, right.
but so it's the difference of flexibility
Hmm.
while
Hmm.
keeping, it's like you have flexibility, but you still have a spine,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's a little bit like doing that, I think, and I think it takes sense. And I think you're right to do that, you choose which client is going to benefit the most
yeah,
from which style.
yeah.
So it gives
Yeah,
you a
but
lot of
I'm
freedom.
glad to know that you also have the same approach, like
Yeah.
because feng shui, when people talk about feng shui or whoever who never knew or practiced feng shui, they have like a certain mindset. Like their first question is, um, for example, their first question is, okay, my bed direction, my head, is this right or not? I cannot tell now.
I know. This is all it. And actually, I mean, I mentioned to you once, one of the funny things that I would always hear from like my Korean and Japanese friends,
Yeah.
50% of them would say, oh, you should sleep with your head to the north. And 50% of them would say, you shouldn't sleep with your head to the north.
Right, 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 right.
And so there's all these mixed stories. And the problem is also, when some information goes through the culture, but people don't actually understand the root or don't understand the real thing. It's like,
Exactly.
that consultant's yellow wallet, everybody sort of remembers this point, but then it's not really, it's not
Yeah.
really
So,
truthful and it gets confusing.
and then I discussed the same thing in the book too, because feng shui, yes, it started in China and,
Yeah,
long, long, long time ago, but then it traveled to different countries, and then a different country has cultivated, different style
that's it.
based on the cultural background
That's
or
it.
so of course each country has a little bit different style
Hmm.
or concepts. For example, that head to nose in Japan is bad. I mean, many people think it's bad because in Japan the dead people when lay down, lay down, they keep their head toward the north. So it's like a death. It's a symbol of death for Japanese people.
Whereas in the Chinese tradition, what they always said death position was with your feet going out the door because they
Exactly.
carry a dead body feet first.
Right. But
So I mean, the different cultures have the different things, but then which one's really true? And this is
yeah.
what's so hard, is you
Yeah.
can have the belief and then there's the real truth, and then how do they blend, and how much
Yes.
does the belief actually like our intention, how much does that create our experience, or how
Yeah.
much is it like it really doesn't matter. I've been saying recently, it kind of doesn't matter if you believe feng shui or not, it's
Mhm.
still working. So
True,
that's
exactly.
also true.
Yes, definitely. And I think you also have this similar situation, like the situation I'm gonna explain now. Whenever I go to my client's house, most of the time, it's not about feng shui. It's not even going to feng shui. It's more like a common sense thing. You know what I mean? Common sense. Are you really comfortable with this space, this layout, this color scheme? Like,
But sometimes people, sometimes they do it. I mean, there's so many reasons why we make the choices in our home, right?
right.
Like somebody might have suggested it, or oh, the color was already here, so I just kept it, or I saw this in a magazine and it seemed nice,
Right.
or sometimes they just, oh, when we moved, we just put the sofa. I'm sure you
Yeah.
met this, right?
Yeah.
Oh, when we moved, we just put the sofa there, and so it's just stayed
Yeah,
there for
exactly,
7 years,
exactly.
even though it's a terrible position and it's uncomfortable, and I complain about it, but I didn't
Hmm.
move it.
hmm So before I get to the point about feng shui, like there are a lot of things we can actually suggest to make the space better.
But I
It's
think that's feng shui. I like to say, if it's not functional, it's also not feng shui.
hmm
Like it has to function. That has to be part of it.
exactly,
And
definitely.
that's, I think, where, first thing has to be like, and this is what I love about what you're presenting. Like you present everything in a really functional,
Hmm.
clear way where it's just simple, it's not heavy, it's not complicated. You just do this,
Yeah,
do this,
yeah.
step by step. But it has to be functional and not like, that consultant guy who would say, oh, just put, a green shirt on your hanger in your window in the east, and then that's going to do something. So what the heck? I mean, it might do something. I
Right.
can't say it wouldn't,
Hmm.
but if you did a plant and it looked nice, that
Hmm.
might be a better way to bring green into that area of your room, instead of hanging an ugly green shirt on a metal hanger by your window,
Right,
which has
right.
no aesthetic value or function or whatever. So
Hmm.
this is kind of the problem when people think it's so mystical that it can't be practical also.
I know. I think that's the thing we, as a feng shui expert, keep telling people over and over and over. I think
I
because
have so many people, like, and especially it's usually the husbands, right? Because
yeah.
usually, the husband's kind of reluctant, and and I'll say some, make a suggestion. He's like, well, that's not feng shui, that's common sense. I was like, yeah, and you're not doing it, and then all of a sudden, it's like, can you come to my office, and all of a sudden they get interested when they realize it's not just about bamboo and wind chimes,
Hmm. Hmm.
that they're actually going to do something that makes sense. Like,
Right,
you
right.
got the wall behind you, you can see
Hmm.
an open view,
Hmm.
you can reach for the things you need without bending over, in an uncomfortable position. So
Right, 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 right.
I know something I wanted to ask,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
um, because I think my mother was Hungarian and my father British, and I think from my mother I learned a few things that for me were actually very like feng shui aligned.
Hmm.
I was almost going to speak Japanese. It's really hard for me not to speak Japanese with you.
You can, you can.
So I was gonna say, fushi teki desho.
Oh,
So I was gonna say it's like really feng shui like.
uh-huh.
Um, and I kind of was curious, like, about what did we learn in our cultures where there was already doing something that was like feng shui. Like, what did you learn as a child in Japan, or what did you observe that you
Oh,
doing? And later on, you realized actually that was pretty feng shui.
yeah,
And
yeah, that's a great question. Actually, maybe I discussed this the same thing in summer when we met in Clubhouse, cleaning the bathroom. Cleaning bathroom, let's say in hotel in Japan,
yeah,
restaurant in Japan,
yeah,
the dirtiest place it considered to be bathroom usually. And then if you go to the restaurant or hotel, the bathroom is so clean, really, really, really clean. That's one of the great feng shui
yeah.
that,
And
common sense in Japan.
totally. And I think the Japanese also, even if, not everybody has the cleanest home or the tidiest home or whatever. I think people can really misunderstand based on Marie Kondo's aesthetic, which, I love the
Mm.
idea that she's pushing, but there's a lot of clutter in Japan, actually. that
Yes, yes.
people don't expect, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Like the bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
people generally have, there's a very clear boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Like not only, and this is something that I learned in Japan that I do also now still, like you leave your shoes from outside, you leave at the front door. And then in Japan, they always wear slippers inside. And
Mm-hmm.
then but you also take off those slippers to use bathroom slippers in the bathroom, and then you leave the bathroom slippers inside the bathroom. And
Yeah.
so there's a very clear energetic line
Mm-hmm.
with the
Mm-hmm.
bathroom. Like the
Yeah.
Japanese are so clear on that. And I'm just amazed people in North America will walk inside with shoes from the outdoors, walk into the bathroom on the same floor where you're going to go out from the shower with your bare feet. And on this, it's just, it's, for me, it's like, it's impossible to imagine this kind of thing. So that's also something I brought from Japan, in which you
Uh-huh.
probably
Uh-huh.
realize is maybe that's very fusui-teki, like very
Yes, it's
feng
very
shui.
Fusui lifestyle. Yeah. Not only bathroom, but I think you also know the entrance area. Entrance area. I mean, as you know, Japanese apartment houses is that
Mhm.
is totally there's a boundary.
It's a very clear, like, well, genkan, like
Yes,
it's a very clear, like you walk in and this is the entrance. It's like it's
exactly.
like a landing zone.
Exactly,
Yeah.
landing down, and then you step in to the
Yes.
different zone, living zone, right? So when I came here, New York, for the first time in 2008,
Yeah.
I was very shocked when I when I moved into the apartment here. Where is Genkan? Open the door, and I see just right there is in a living room, you know.
I know. I know. And even in just sometimes in Japan, and you'll see in that, like Western people recognize from the restaurants, sometimes they have like those hanging like low curtains that
Yeah,
you just sort of go under and you
yeah.
enter, and it kind of slows down the energy. And sometimes
Mhm.
you have that inside the entrance also in Japan.
Yeah.
So, or there's a sliding door, like the screens
Mhm,
behind you,
mhm.
so it creates a bit of a boundary, but there's
Mhm.
usually that step, right? So you come in, you have your
Exactly.
shoes there for the step,
Yeah,
and then you
yeah.
step into the home.
Uh-huh.
And it's like just that clear demarcation, I think, is so helpful as
Yes.
like a landing zone. And also what I named before, like, a lot of Japanese homes, like the houses, they have like some heater or air conditioning unit outside by the door. It's not very attractive. But
Exactly.
they
Exactly.
almost everybody, especially my clients now, but I mean, especially like people will often put a nice plant there, and it's like a little bit at an angle and it's done artistically, and they do something to make the entrance nice. And
Yes.
I love that in Japan.
I think that's what I make in my consultation here. Most
Mhm.
of my clients are American, New Yorker, some are Chinese, some are Korean and Japanese still, but most of them are American people here. And I introduced this Japanese style genkan thing,
Mhm.
fusui-teki genkan
Yeah.
concept. And then
Functionally
people were like,
friendly entrance for those
wow.
of you, translation. Totally. The thing that I learned from my mother, first of all, actually, my aunt used to work in a hospital. And
Oh.
so she had, and her home, she had like, there was the entrance area, there was like two doors. There was like the door, and then you entered, and then there was the other entrance, and she never let outside shoes into the home. And we were kind of flexible with it, right? And of course, in the winter in Montreal, like, of course, you didn't take your boots upstairs and inside. But
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
so she was the first one. And then when I moved to Japan, I took that up.
mhm,
But what my mother would never allow,
mm,
which actually they don't do in Japan very much,
mm.
except I think in the home people don't do it, even though they understand this aesthetic.
Right.
My mother would never allow a product in the package to
Mm.
be on the dining table. So she would
Oh.
never allow, like, so she wouldn't put out, so I put these treats out, right? I went to the Japanese shop yesterday. She would
Mhm,
never put out the plastic container
mhm.
with the package on the table, or a soft drink in the bottle on the table, or butter in the butter package on the table. She would transfer it to another dish and put it there.
That's also feng shui. I
I
mean,
think so.
you know,
Right, so
definitely.
that's the thing, like I learned that, and I actually taught some of my high school friends, and one of them says they still do it, like it's like 30 years later.
Wow.
And he'll still remember my mother, he still remembers my mother's name. He's like, oh, we can't do that because Marika wouldn't approve. He says 30 years later, that my mother wouldn't approve of that. And I
Mhm.
still really love that, because you're taking care of the environment
Uh-huh.
and making each act
Mm-hmm.
to be something that you respect. And that's something I think the Japanese actually really can do so well,
Mm-hmm.
but they
Mm-hmm.
don't always, because you really do sometimes see, the mayonnaise container and like the soy sauce container and
Right,
all of
right,
those things. So they can do it so well, and many people do, and many people don't, because it's like, it doesn't matter, it's not
right,
so
right,
important.
right. But
But
it
in the
makes us
West,
feel more like we are treated like higher. You know what I mean? Like,
totally. Well,
mm,
and this is what I've been saying recently, and especially with the pandemic,
mm,
you know, whenever something's just functional,
mm-hmm,
I think, if you take something that's just functional and you make it nicer,
mm-hmm,
you're
mm-hmm,
no longer in like survival mode.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's not
yeah.
like just eating for biological need. It's
Mm-hmm,
just like actually it's like the art of eating and the
mm-hmm.
experience of eating. So all of those things. And I think with Feng Shui, it's not just living in a functional way, even though Feng
Right.
Shui has to be functional. We take functional and then we step it up.
Exactly. But put it a higher level or
That's it.
enrichment, right?
That's it. So
Yeah.
and that's something that I think, even though unfortunately, my experience in Japan is, everybody gets it, but they get it for somebody else and they don't give it to themselves.
Oh, that's a Japanese personality.
Definitely.
I don't know if it's good or bad, but that's very
It's
Japanese.
nice to give to others, but you have to like get, like they say on the airplane, you put on your own mask first before you help another, right?
Right, right,
So
right, right.
we need to do both. But I think because there's that innate understanding of beauty,
Hmm, hmm.
and like, there's just, the most beautiful containers, even a little thing for soy sauce or a little spoon for the salt or something like this, like they can just do so many amazing things
Right, 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 right.
that I think that must have helped you
Hmm, hmm. Yeah,
in,
very Japanese.
coming to the West and having already, the feng shui gives a focus, but there's already, you grew up
Hmm.
with some of that sensibility.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's a gift, I think, Yeah.
That's something where I think anybody like me who lives in Japan for like a period of time, you can't go back to the old way of
Hmm.
doing things.
Right,
I
right,
can't
right,
walk
right.
into a house with shoes unless the client insists, because they're painting or they're renovating or something like
Hmm,
that. But it's like
hmm.
I feel like a barbarian if I walk into a house wearing shoes. It just feels so wrong.
That's actually interesting because I feel, I mean, as a Japanese people, and then of course taking off the shoes is like a normal, right? And then that's how we were raised and how we are living.
Mhm.
But then when I came here, like sometimes I think I had some moment when I had to quickly go back to the house and get something, because I forgot. And then I really needed to, but then, well, I don't have time to take off the shoes. And then the very first moment that I stepped in the house with shoes on, I was like, wow, this felt like I'm so wild.
I totally get it. Sometimes I have to do the same thing. It's like, okay, when I come home, I'm mopping the floor. It feels really, really wrong. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But let's say put it the opposite way. I see the contemporary feng shui, BTB, let's say. I was very, first I thought, wow, this is really simple and easy for
mhm,
everybody to practice,
mhm.
you know?
It seems that way, but it's still deep
Yeah,
also.
yeah, still deep, but then how can I say, make people more interested and then accessible.
That's it. I
Well,
think it works more with, you're not just listening to an authority, because, historically in feng shui, in China, the feng shui consultant was very,
right,
only
right.
rich people could have,
Mhm.
would do it. There's a very, high status. You
Yeah.
have to obey
Mhm, mhm.
what they say.
Right.
And, you're just doing something because someone told you. And that's, I think,
Mhm,
the negative connotation people have with feng shui. Oh, I can't do what I want and I can't, and I think there's more in this contemporary approach when you can be adaptable and you can
mhm.
see, yeah, there's still some things that even if you like it, it's not going to be great for you. And then you might experience negative consequence, even though you like the design.
Right.
So we'll have to have a conversation about that. But I
Mhm.
think there's a little bit more of an explanation and an understanding and
Mhm.
a dialogue that I think people can start to understand. So it's user friendly and it's
Yeah.
applicable and is a logic also.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all feng shui has a logic, even the very esoteric, astrological stuff. It's
Right.
amazing. I had my Bashi reading done, there's one of the astrological readings. It's mind blowing. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. It's
Mm-hmm.
also not what I want to do when I'm working with my clients because there's enough other stuff that I'm also paying attention to.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
With especially energy flow dynamics, I think is really underdone
Mm-hmm.
a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not written about. That's kind of when I write my book, that's going to be the main focus. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think everybody's always focusing on Bagua and how can I get money, get relationship, get all these things.
Right.
And I think that's a very Western, like, let's use this spiritual practice to get something.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like, how about if we just create real balance and then we start
Mm-hmm.
magnetizing things that's better. So
Yeah.
my original perception also, I think like you, possibly when you first heard about Western feng shui, you might have thought, my first thing was, it's like everything in the West, they take something and they dilute it and they make it weaker. But I actually think there's an important update that was made where I think it's more applicable and we don't have to speak another language. And this is the hard thing, the feng shui is a foreign word.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things which makes it sound mystical, but also makes it less applicable. And even, it's interesting because in Japan, they pronounce the word, fusui, as we were saying, they pronounce it the same letters with Japanese pronunciation.
Right,
But in
right.
English, it's still always a foreign word.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But what if you needed to put feng shui into English? Like, what's the word
Not
you come
really,
up
because I
with?
mean, my teacher tried. So my great teacher, Rhea Peak, she studied with Tara Catherine Collins of the Western School of Feng Shui
Mm.
quite early. And she tried creating the word enviromancy. So like geomancy, but that was for the geology and the
Uh-huh.
geography.
Uh-huh.
And she tried working with enviromancy, like, well, how does your environment predict?
Mm.
But it's hard to create new words because again, you still need to explain it. And
Right.
and it goes back to, and I think you quoted the very first,
Mm.
didn't you? The very first Tao.
Mm.
It's like the Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao. So it means if you can name it, it's already diluted. And this is kind of the problem with feng shui. As soon as you say feng shui, it's already kind of a shadow and
Mm-hmm.
not the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this is a really difficult thing. I think it's really useful for everybody to read some Taoist books to get an understanding, even though it's not exactly feng shui, it's still the mindset. So I don't know that we can come up. I would love to come up with
Yeah.
another term. There is an actual like branch of science that's environmental psychology.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to talk about now.
But there is that, but that's a scientific field. So we can't say,
Right,
unless we do a
right.
degree in environmental psychology, we can't say we're an environmental
Mhm,
psychologist.
mhm, mhm.
But there's a correlation.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And then that can be there's like a subject in a university or it's a degree.
You can do a degree in environmental psychology. I mean,
Right,
so
right.
so whenever somebody tells me, it's like, oh, feng shui, it's not scientific. I was like, have you ever heard of environmental psychology? Can you tell me what that is? And biophilia is, there's 14, I think, principles
Uh-huh.
of biophilic design where it's science-backed principles about aspects of nature and the applications of nature in design that are satisfying and helpful for human beings. And this is all backed by science. And every one of the principles is totally feng shui.
Uh-huh.
And it's not things that we would expect, but in some cases. But every time I look at it, it's like, oh, that's you can apply it in feng shui that way, and you can apply it
Uh-huh.
in feng shui that way.
Uh-huh.
So I think we're getting more and more into the fact that our culture is going to start recognize, world
Right, right,
cultures are
right,
going to
right.
start recognizing it.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just glad, you've got something that at least there's like a friendly introduction that's like easy for people to look at, like some of the different elements. And I mean, especially what I'm so happy you did is just that little, the warning that this is not everything.
Warning.
And you
Yeah.
can't do everything from a book,
Mm-hmm.
because of course everybody wants to, because it's cheaper and it's easier. And, the North American mindset, of course, is I can do everything myself. You can't.
Yeah, but the way, the more you do it by yourself, by using Googling and YouTube and, you know, books, and you get more confused.
You can. I think you have to choose your sources. If you keep looking at so many sources, then it gets really confusing, because they said, well,
Right,
I read on this page, I read this, but the other person said that. And so then
right.
what? So I think you
Right.
have to find, just like you said,
Mm.
you know, when you work with your clients, you know, you decide I'm going to do more traditional with this one and, you know, more contemporary with this one, and then you stick with that one.
Right,
You know, so the
right.
experts can know how to do the different ones, but I think for somebody who's going to try themselves, and I think people should try, right? I think we
Right.
want people to try with a book or try from the internet. It's great, and then you can see if it works. But it is more complicated, of course. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, one more thing I wanted to discuss, because
Mhm,
the thing you were talking about just before, and then this could be maybe the last topic, which
mhm.
is I discussed in this book, you know, Feng Shui. Feng Shui is not the one subject. It's actually a part of Chinese medicine. That, you know, the 8 branches.
Yeah.
Not so many people know about it.
Mhm.
And you know, my um, interestingly, I used to work for acupuncture college before. I
Mm,
discussed that in the book too. And then, you know, and then why acupuncture? Feng Shui and acupuncture using the same philosophy, same principle, yin and yang, right? And then 5 elements. But acupuncture become college degree program. It's a master degree program, and then it's a doctor degree. You know, it has a program. It's an academic
yes.
program, and then well known and a professional. It's really now more and more becoming advanced.
Yes.
You know, technology. Why Feng Shui is still here?
Yeah. It amazes me, and especially when we have, you know, degrees in environmental psychology and, you know, biophilic design being science backed, and there's so much data that supports it. But I think, again, you know, part of it is, you know, acupuncture is an English word.
Right.
We don't have the English word for feng shui still, and I think it's a problem. And I used to teach English. I'm really good with words.
Yeah.
I can't come up with the word for it. I still
Mhm,
haven't
mhm,
yet. I might eventually.
mhm,
But you know, the thing, just to close and to tie that in, you know, what I love about like your last chapter you called feng shui lifestyle.
mhm, mhm.
And I think this is brilliant, because
Oh,
it's
thank you.
not just, and I like to say it's part of mindset, right? And I keep telling people as well, feng shui is not just a design
Mhm,
formula, it's a mindset.
mhm, mhm,
But that's part of what you're saying of it's a lifestyle, and
mhm,
it's literally, you know, how you see the world and how
mhm,
you see things connecting, and
mhm,
it's not just limited to your four walls. and
mhm,
and I
mhm.
have people who'll call me up, they'll say, you know, my computer, my car, and my phone all died within 1 week, what's going on, you know? And so it's like, that doesn't sound feng shui, but it actually is, right? Because it's not just about the home, and it's about how do you see reality as sending you a message,
Mhm, mhm.
and how do you
Yes.
see the connection between things. So I think people do have some understanding of that.
Uh-huh.
But I love how you explain that, like lifestyle is not just also, you know, I hang my wind chime here and I do this here and then yay, everything's perfect. You like, you still have to go and live your life and do things, and also take care of your health and take care of your mind and take care of your body, and like all
Mhm.
these different
It's
parts.
like holistic. Everything is connected.
Totally. You know, I mean, if we think about it, and this is a science-based thing. So I did a certification for like a really, it was really tough exam for a certification that's all science-backed
Mhm,
um, data for how to manage buildings, and they can get a safety rating, like a health rating. It's called the Well
mhm,
Building Standard,
mhm,
and it's all science-based.
mhm,
And the thing about, they actually want you to have like kind of doormat or drainage system or something at the entrance before you enter.
uh-huh.
And that's in the category, not for cleaning, it's in the category for air,
Mhm, mhm,
because what you bring in on your shoes affects the air.
mhm, mhm,
So, like you're saying, what's the dividing line? Like, there's
mhm,
no division. Like you're saying, everything's holistic. So, what's happening on the floor affects the air up here. And you
mhm,
know what it's like? You mop your floors or you vacuum your floors, and the air up here looks cleaner
mhm,
because there's no separation. And
mhm,
so,
mhm.
similarly, from your home and your body and your mind and your emotions and your health, it's all connected. So it all
Right.
has to be part of a lifestyle.
Yeah. True, true.
So I'm
That's
so
how I
glad you
my
talked
book.
about that. And I mean, how you managed and how many pages? It's not many. I mean, it's
It's not many. It was really,
just over 100 pages plus appendix, right?
yep.
I mean, to be able to discuss so many topics and still give something usable, and also, the realization, this is just a little bit.
Yes, a little bit. And then I
Appetite.
tell, readers or whoever who wrote this, and actually I had a book signing event,
Great. How was it?
on Sunday near my
Nice.
house. It's a small bookshop near my house, and then, I sign and then give a message to everybody. Enjoy a little bit feng shui, practice a little bit of feng shui every
That's
day.
it. That's it. And it's not like you said, not doing everything all at once and then sitting and saying, well, what's happening? Like it's
Mhm,
not,
mhm.
my clients who had the most success were the ones who they apply some things, but they still continue their life as normal, and they still go out, and they're not waiting for their mysterious boyfriend to unexpectedly ring the
Mysterious.
doorbell, who like they haven't met yet. They go out
Mhm,
and they live their life, and that's how they meet somebody all of a sudden,
mhm,
because they're
mhm.
actually having a life and having a lifestyle.
Right, right,
So
right, right.
just a little bit.
Yes,
Like,
just a little bit,
I
because
wish we had
yeah,
少しずつ.
少しずつです。その通り。
Yeah. So 少しずつ is bit by bit,
そ
I
う
guess,
そうそう
right?
そうそう。うん、少しずつ、風水的ライフスタイルは少しずつ。
Yeah. That's what the feng shui lifestyle is, a little bit at a time. And I mean, you imagine, oh, I cleaned my apartment, like I dusted and I vacuumed and it felt so good. I'm never going to do it again. How's that going to work? Right? Of course you like have to dust and clean and regularly, and you brush your
Yeah,
teeth every
yeah.
day, and you have to do
Mhm.
all of these things. So it doesn't mean you change the feng shui location every day, but you're in the lifestyle every day.
Yes. So yeah, that's what I want to tell everybody, and then tell myself too.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I feel so good when I do huge cleaning or huge decluttering or
Mhm.
some huge event.
Yeah,
But event is event, right? You
that's
have to
it.
make it lifestyle.
This is it, where it's regular, and it's and it's also practice. Like we still have to practice all of these things too. Like we know it, we teach it, we consult it, but we also have to live it. We still have to wash dishes, we still have to clean the bathroom, we still have
Mhm.
to do all of these things,
Yep.
but it's part of life in the physical world, in a physical body, and
Yeah.
having a home. And at
Mm.
least we can appreciate and we can understand and enjoy our homes.
Right, right, right. So that's what we share with people
That's
and
it.
clients, and we are
Yeah,
still learning and
that's it.
practicing.
I know, and I love this. And this is the other thing, right? Like, because you said not everything could be in one book, but also, you and I have studied, and we did like training programs, and we like practiced for years, and we still read books and learn from each other and all of it. Like, we're
Mhm.
still learning some hints, because you can't learn everything. And it's not like,
Exactly.
you went to medical school and you have everything and you did but one of my meditation teachers, she said, she would joke with people, because she heard from somebody who went to medical school, you do the gallbladder like for half a day,
Mhm.
and then that's it. And if you miss that class, you miss the gallbladder. So if
Mhm.
anybody missed the class, she's like, oh, you missed the gallbladder, and so the fact is, there's no comprehensive,
Mhm. Mhm.
there isn't anything that's fully comprehensive where we learn absolutely everything. And I
Right,
think
right,
that's
right.
when you're in the lifestyle, that's where we start to see new connections, because we're living in the 21st century with electricity and like all of
Mhm.
these things. You and I can start to see, like, we have the traditional training and we understand the history, and we have the contemporary training, and then we can
Mhm.
start to
Mhm.
see, oh, okay, we could actually do this a little bit, and it's like the old style, but it's also
Yep.
new.
Mhm. So every day is a little bit feng shui, a little bit
That's it.
lifestyle. Okay, so yeah, I think
Thank
the
you.
time comes. So yeah, it was very, very, I mean, like we discussed a lot of things as I expected. We already expected,
Yeah.
but now I have to do a lot of
Oh,
editing.
I think people can listen to the whole thing. I think
Oh
everybody.
yeah, maybe. Yeah,
I think we should just leave it unedited. I think it's this is part of the thing with life, right? We can I think people also imagine, like with Feng Shui, everything looks like a magazine and it's perfectly tidy and it's all
Right,
of this.
right.
Like this is actually this perfectly tidy conversation, but it's got natural flow and it's
It's a natural flow. We
organic.
didn't actually plan any, actually, we didn't do,
No,
anything actually. We
no,
just talk
just
about it.
talk. That's it.
Mhm.
That's
I
it.
loved it. I loved it,
Thank
Mark.
you. So nice to meet you
Maybe we
face to
should do
face
it
in real time.
again.
Yeah, definitely. But let me know when when this is online. I'll be happy to share it and then just
Oh
write
yeah,
what you
definitely.
said.
I
I'm so
will make
happy
it
that
a
you.
little prettier, like, put your name here and then,
Yeah, sure. Perfect.
and I
Whatever
share
you,
it with you, okay?
whatever you want to do, whatever you want
Mhm.
to do. And congratulations. I know from just even for me, just writing anything, that producing a finished product, people have no idea on the level of work that goes into like making it public. There's a whole other energy. So I really
Mhm.
admire you for doing this. And
Thank you very much, Mark. Yeah,
congratulations.
maybe next time when you publish your book, let me know. I'll
Absolutely.
become a reviewer.
Love that.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
All right. ありがとう, Mark. Thank you
はい、あり
very
がとう。
much.
こちらこそ。Thank
All
you.
right. またね。
またね。バイ
Thank
バイ。
you.
See
Bye.
you.